ब्रह्मरूपमादिमध्यशेष सर्वभासकम् भावषट्कहीन रूप नित्य सत्यमद्वयम् वाङ्मनोति गोचरं च नेति नेति भाविकम् तं नमामि देवदेव रामकृष्णमीश्वरम्। Dear comrade at arms, O sadhakas, we have been discussing certain salient features of the scripture Yoga Vasishta. Just as in Ramayana, where there are 6 kandas, 6 episodes or 6 sections, Yoga Vasishta too has 6 sections which are called as prakaranas. We have come so far in what has been called as Sthiti Prakarana, wherein we have certain characteristics of the origin of our perception, the entity or the principle which we call as I, which governs all our actions, our speech, our perceptions, our thought, our decisions. That's why we say, I think, I decide, I perceive, I sense the objects, I sense the world outside. And without that I, the world cannot be to me, to the individual person. That is why instead of searching outside, where all the time our attention is there on outside the world, because we make use of our senses and bodies to feel the world, to sense the world. And unfortunate because that has been our habit throughout the evolution, from vegetable kingdom to animal kingdom up to mankind, human beings. Our attention has always been outside because it was necessary for our survival. It was necessary for the propagation of our species. As we had seen in earlier discussions, that for animal kingdom, the evolution as such is choiceless. They don't have any choice. Whereas the moment we step into this species called as Homo sapiens, human beings, we have the ability to not only look outside, that has been there throughout the evolution, but we are able to see within ourselves, or we are able to feel that I which perceives the world, which senses the world, and which acts. Vasishta starts the quest with this particular principle called as I, or ahankara as it's called. We saw last time that a small carelessness on the part of Shukra, who was son of Bhrigu Rishi, he had to fall into so many species and become human being at the end, and then again trace back his origin. This is only a hint which Vasishta gives, that involvement starts with seeing something outside, Because Shukra saw somebody and he got enamored, he got attracted, and then the whole process of his evolution or manifestation started. That is the first thing. That is, whenever you are meditating, whenever you are a sadhaka, there is a possibility of a fall. And if I may say so, we do fall. But with that fall, we again rise up because of one great quality which we have, human beings have. That is the quality of discontent. You seek, you set goals, you become successful, you achieve those goals. But at the end of it, after achieving, we get a small thought. Is this it? It's not so great as I saw. I mean, as I thought. I do not know how many of you have heard of one Howard Hughes. He was an American citizen. And since his childhood, one question persisted in his mind all the time. That question was, is that all? Is this all? He went to school. After learning, he felt this question repeatedly pestering him, nagging him. And then he became one of the greatest industrialists. And he was known as aviator. That is, he started a company called as Boeing, which still produces aeroplane engines for the airlines throughout the world. But even at the peak of his success, this question was nagging him, is that all? He is our representative who feels dissatisfied or discontent at what he has achieved. And that's where our journey starts, our quest starts in a different direction, which we saw throughout these discussions. One Armenian master was known as George Gurdjieff. He used to say, in fact, as somebody was telling, that we don't have monopoly over spirituality, our country as such. No doubt, thousands and probably lakhs of people have got enlightened. And we have the expertise in this process of seeking. But then this Armenian person was very poor. He also became a very noted master. We are not going into his life. He would say that we are a crowd. We are not individuals. We are a crowd within. And we have to seek that individual who is there. And sometimes he would even say, go to the extent of saying, we have to develop this individual. A small example will help to understand what he's trying to say. Let us say that we set an alarm clock and we have decided to get up early in the morning, say 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And the decision is very strong and they set the alarm and then we go to sleep. When the alarm strikes, we get up and we look outside the window, and then we feel that it's still dark and say that let me sleep for 10 more minutes, and we go to sleep. Now, what was that? The first person to decide was sitting in that decision seat earlier evening, who set up that clock. But the person who heard the alarm, he was a different person. And he said, it's better to sleep for some more time. And this is where in all our decisions, we have crowds and crowds and crowds. Vasishta puts it in a very beautiful way. He doesn't discourage us, he encourages us. He says that don't get connected to the mind, manas, because manas by nature is chanchala, random, because it is meant to pick the different sense objects from outside the world. So it goes on seeking. It has almost like hundreds of arms, which goes on searching for different sense objects. So naturally, it has to be random. So Vashishta says, if you allow the mind, it will become your master. But if you reclaim the sovereignty, if you reclaim the mastership over it, then it becomes your friend. Because then you will have control over the mind, over the other facets of the mind stuff. So he always gives one hint. He keeps repeating a hint. He says, don't get enamored by the objects. Don't surrender to the objects. As far as possible, don't get connected to the objects. Don't get attached to them. They mean the same thing. So with this, he starts the stories which we are going to take up today. They are basically two. They are very beautiful stories. At the end of this discussion, I'll sum up all those 5 stories. It is said there was a rishi known as Saraloma, and he had a son by name Dashura. And Dashura this Dashura didn't have mother, only his father, and he used to love his father very much. And as is the law of nature, Saraloma dropped his body, and Dashura was extreme. He was in extreme pain. He didn't know what to do. He went on mourning for the death of his father. They said he heard a voice. He calls it as Devavani. I would like to say that he heard a voice which said that don't go after the nature you have, which is impermanent. Seek the nature which is eternal within you. And Saraloma, being a son of a rishi, he had practiced meditation. And suddenly he woke up and he started doing tapas. But then wherever he went, they used to dwell in a forest. Wherever he went, he found the place to be improper. It was not pure enough for meditation. That's what he felt, Dashura. And it is said that he performed tapas and to propitiate Brahma. And Brahma appeared, and then he asked him, what do you want? He said, I want a place to sit. I want to do my contemplation, tapas. And I don't find any place fit enough for sitting, for contemplation. Brahma smiled and then he said, you see, every sentence is important. You become light enough to sit on the tendril of a tree, tendril of a branch. It was a kadamba tree. And he, Antardhan, he disappeared, Brahma. Again, he started contemplating on becoming light. And it is said that he succeeded and sitting on a kadamba, tendril. Tendril means the leaves, the new leaves which have come. It appears fantastic. We'll come to that little later on. And then he performed tapas according to the Vedic havans. It is said first he performed Gomedha, sacrifice of cow. Then he performed Ashwamedha, sacrifice of a horse. And then he performed Naramedha. And at the end of it, he got enlightened. Now, this is a highly objectionable uh, practice, which is probably not at all possible nowadays. But then it is said that he got enlightened. Now we'll have to analyze, we'll have to understand. They are all symbols, basically. These stories, unfortunately, when we hear the stories, we go only by the story part of it. Per se, we go by the words of the story. But actually, they have something else to deliver us, something else to present. Sitting on a tendril means you become so light. It's not the body weight that is mentioned here, because meditation you don't do with the, of course you keep the bodies without any movement, no doubt, but meditation is always of the mind. So to become lighter than the tendril of the tree, what does it mean? You get rid of all the past impressions that are weighing heavily on your mind. There is a very beautiful movie these days. It's an animation movie in which a tortoise advises a panda, Kung Fu Panda. It's not meant for children, but well, we sometimes identify ourselves with children. In which that tortoise tells the panda, he says, past is history, yesterday is history, and tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift, and that's why it's called as a present. So the tortoise is teaching the panda to be in the present most of the time. And that's what Dashura did. He started learning to be in the present, forgetting or erasing all the past. And every time, every moment, every feeling was a present to him. And that's how he became light. Second thing is Gomedha. Go means cow, but at the same time, spiritual texts tell us go actually means speech, vak. Gomedha means sacrificing the speech. That is the external speech. Initially, you do the external, you observe mauna, observe silence. I do not know how many of you have heard of Vipassana meditation, which was propagated by Buddha. They have many centers all over the country and all over the world also. So if you attend their 10-day course, the first thing they do is they ask you, or they tell you the greatest, the very strongest instruction given to the people who participate in that camp is become silent. You are not allowed to speak with anybody except during the time of meditation or at the end of the meditation. You can go and seek to clarify your doubts with the teacher who is teaching you meditation. Invariably, the first 2 days are extremely torturous because most of the time we are involved in speech. Not only the speech which is heard or which is transmitted through words, sound, but also we keep on speaking within the mind. But at the end of second day, the mind starts complying because it knows that there is no go, you cannot possibly speak. And slowly and steadily, the mind starts becoming calm, becoming silent. I cannot call it as silent, but it becomes, the thoughts are less in the movement of thoughts is less. So Gomedha means he controlled his speech. Ashwamedha, It's called as the sacrifice of the horse, all right. Ashwamedha is Ashva, horse. But Kathopanishad and many of the Upanishad, they tell us Ashva means the senses, control of senses. You control the senses. And when you control the senses, mind has to calm down. And until these things are to an extent, I don't say that you perfect in the control of speech as well as senses, but when you are able to control to an extent, then you are able to see the principle which we have been talking about or in all these sessions, the I principle. We'll be able to see it. We'll be able to feel that I. And that is to be sacrificed. When you sacrifice that through what is known as Naramida. Nara means it's man, but at the same time, Nara also means Ahankara. When you drop that Ahankara, when you sacrifice that Ahankara, you get enlightened. You see, the whole scripture has given you a methodology of seeking, methodology of the quest of this divine adventure. So he is enlightened and he's still living in the present or tendril of that Kadamba tree. One divine lady approaches him. She has a request. She says that I'm the presiding deity of this forest. And I know that you have got jnana, you have got enlightened. And then I want you to help me. The Muni asks her, what do you want? She says that I am alone and I want a son. And it is said that in all compassion, Dashura gives her a flower and she has a son. She teaches him all the other secular knowledge. And at the end of it, because she knows the value of enlightenment and importance of secular knowledge as well, that's why she teaches him secular knowledge first. And then she brings him to Dashura and she requests him, Bhagavan, please, please teach my son about Atma Jnana and let him proceed and let him become enlightened. And when he starts speaking to that child on the Vedantic stories, it is said Vasishta was passing through that forest and he heard this conversation, this dialogue between Dashura and his disciple. And Vasishta tells this story that he had heard this dialogue between Dashura and the child. What is the dialogue? You see, it's connected. The dialogue is also very interesting as far as we are concerned. The child is asking the same doubt which Rama had also asked. In the first, Utpatti Prakarana, Rama asked, how is it possible that the all-encompassing Brahman becomes a tiny I and mine? How is it possible? And then he asked this question also, how does the infinite become finite? So indirectly, Rama had asked for the creation process. How is this world created? And Dashura asked the similar question by asking the order of creation of this infinite Atman. I'll just narrate what he tells. It says, it is always the initial sankalpa. Sankalpa means tendency to think. Tendency to think. The moment that tendency arises, we start thinking, and that's how the infinite apparently becomes small. This tendency continues. The Shukra story. this tendency continues, and then it wants to hear the sound. And then it is said, Akasha is created. Akasha is space in which the sound travels. Second, the tendency to see, tendency to feel, Vayu is created. The tendency to see, Tejas or Agni is created, and tendency to taste, water gets created, and tendency to smell, earth gets created, Prithvi. But then Ashura tells him, this is only a consolation. Because you asked this question, I gave this. And that's what these theories of creations are. They are just stories or explanations given to children or given to the beginners, sadhakas, who are very curious about knowing about the creation. Dashura again tells what Vasishta had told. It apparently looks as if Vasishta got this thought from Dashura. Dashura tells him, don't get enamored. Don't get attached to these explanations of creation. Seek that permanent I. And that's how he starts guiding him. That's the end of this particular story. What has he told us? Vasishta or Vasishta, Yoga Vasishta tells us that the process of creation is less important than seeking the origin. And how to seek the origin? You have to sacrifice something. You have to sacrifice probably your night sleep, as Abdul Kalam ji used to tell. That which doesn't, you should dream, but you should dream such dreams which will not allow you to sleep. You'll have to sacrifice your laziness. You'll have to sacrifice your probably comforts. But when you seek that huge, which is unexplainable, which is beyond words, which is beyond minds, all these sacrifices are petty. That's what Swami Vivekananda said. Choose the higher so that the lowers will get dropped by themselves. Initially, you'll have, because we are used to a particular way of approach to life because of survival. We are always used to see outside. We have to start looking within. And that's where the spirituality starts. And we are talking about that spirituality. How to go about seeking this I principle. When we achieve what Dashura achieved, or what great people have achieved, what happens? In a small story, it's actually not exactly a story as such. It is called as Song of Kacha. After discussing this Song of Kacha, we'll discuss about what are the main items which have been main suggestions which this scripture gives to all of us. Kacha is in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Kacha, as some of you know, most of you know, Kacha was the son of Brihaspati, the guru of gods. And this Kacha, he went into Nirvikal Samadhi, and when he came down from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, in all that infinite joy that within his heart, he burst out, nowhere have I to go. Nothing have I to seek. I may be in the body or out of it. I am in all directions. What have I to grasp? What can I leave? I am the whole. Just 5 lines. And this is what happens to the people. It's like you see something wonderful. A poet may give words. He may paint a picture through words. A painter may paint a beautiful picture. But an ordinary man, he'll just say, ah. But that ah which he says, that joyful ah which he says, is equivalent to that picture, to that poem, because what he felt was same. So Kacha's song is of that 5 lines, and it just expresses the inexpressible. Because he's talking in paradoxes, because there is no other way of talking about it. Vasishta, during this particular process of this Sthiti Prakarana, he discussed 5 important things. He warned us of involvement, and later, with this involvement, we'll get into indulgence. For example, we see something, we get attracted towards it. When we get attracted towards it, we go and see it. Let us say we are doing window shopping. We go and see it, stand in front of it, and the problem starts. Otherwise, it's all right. We say it's a beautiful shirt, it's a beautiful cloth, or a garland, ornament. The problem starts now. What if it sits on my throat? I mean, my neck, the ornament. Or the man says, "How will I look in that shirt?" The problem started. You started getting indulged in that transaction. So Vasishta is telling, he's not, mind you, he's not talking about the ordinary people who are seeking all those things. Fine, he says, no problem, let them seek it, but a time will come. Is that it? It will come, and it will force you to see something else. It will force you to travel backwards. So involvement, then indulging. And once you start indulging, it's as though you are in a quicksand. It goes on drawing into this world of samsara, of needs, more feelings, emotions, anger, lust, all those things will come. So he's telling the sadhakas, so first of all, control your senses, control your speech, be aware, be extremely alert. And a moment of lack of alertness, it can cause a great fall. But then again, he says, even if you fall, and for some probably that fall is necessary also, even if you fall, you are capable of getting up because you lacked alertness. Because of that you fell. You can always learn, you can get up and start walking again. The second advice which he gives was, don't encourage repeated thought. And especially as far as we are concerned, most of us are concerned, we go on repeating the negative thoughts, the things which are not with us, that which is not, pervades our consciousness all the time. I have enough, but I want more than enough. Comparison comes, and through comparison, competition comes. And then again, you get entangled with this world as such, without leaving you any time for contemplation, for sadhana, for knowing yourselves. Don't repeat the thought, the second suggestion. Then repeated thought will bring in all the other emotions. Second suggestion. The third suggestion, he says, all the time. Why did it happen? Why did this attraction happen? The attraction happened because I considered myself different from the Brahman, different from that all-encompassing God or whoever it is. I differentiated myself from other, you, he, and she, and all that. That's how this differentiation started, and along with it, the other process started. So don't differentiate. But then it's very simple to say, for probably for persons like Vasishta, it's a very simple suggestion. Don't differentiate, but differentiate we do. So, what is the uh, suggestion which he gives? He says that start thinking of this universe as yours. Now, I'll again give you a very beautiful example. Uh, one wonderful novel has been written. It's actually a Puranic novel on Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya, the same Yajnavalkya, who is the author of Ishavasa Upanishad and the life in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It is said that he had two wives. He divided whatever he had between the two wives. The first one was his Ardhangini. So she accepted it happily. And the second one, she said, I do not want your property. I want your wisdom. I want to learn from you. So he taught the second wife, the Atma Jnana. The second wife, the first one name was Maitreyi, second wife, Katyayini. She was looking after the ashram. She was a Rajni of that ashram. And there was a discussion which took place, or arguments that took place in Janaka's court. And Janaka had announced 1,000 cows, milch cows, to the person who wins this argument. Godhana was one of the greatest dhana at that time. And then he won the arguments, and he won that prize which was given to the winner. He brought them to the ashram. It is said that Katyayini and Yajnavalkya were sitting under a tree, overlooking a hill, and there was a plateau in which these cows were grazing. She was looking at it and she was extremely happy. Naturally, Yajnavalkya casually asked her, why is it that you're so happy today? She said, don't you see those cows? Yajnavalkya smiled and said, yes, yes, I see those cows. But you used to see cows grazing here and there. Every day we used to see them because that's a pasture. So many cows come there. But today, what's the speciality? Katyayini says that they are my cows. And he says, because of that, you are extremely happy, he asks. She says, yes. She is joyous, blissful. And then suppose Katyayini, he asks her, suppose I ask you one question. Suppose not only these cows, but the whole Vishwa, whole world as such, became yours. What will happen? And this suggestion was given by Yajnavalkya. So she became ecstatic. She said, I'll be very, very, very happy. And then Yajnavalkya says, no, let me continue. There is one more stage. Suppose you consider yourself this whole universe, what will happen? And it said, Katyayani became silent. And people like Kacha, people who are enlightened, they normally become silent when they achieve that. And to the surprise of all these people who have sought and triumphed over their lower natures and then become enlightened, they always say that this was with me all along and I just remembered. I remembered. I had forgotten. And this happens to be the story of every person, every man, every being And that's why Swami Vivekananda said, he said, I'll not find it convenient to be in this body. I'll leave this body, but I'll continue to inspire people to be with God. And I'll not leave till the last being has got enlightened. So this is the story which Yoga Vasishta tells us, the story of a seeker. Initially, how does he start? And then how does he proceed? And how he continues. This is the story which we'll take up in the next session. And I feel that, again, what's more important is we must start swimming if we want to learn. But we must get into water. We must learn how to close our eyes. And I'm certain that many of you have started already doing that. Because unless and until we do that, probably it will be just a discussion and it will be of not much use to us. Yes, these stories are inspiring. These stories tell us to start this quest. But let these stories let them not become questions. Let them become a beginning for quest, which we all have to take up one time or the other. Thank you so much.
When I was listening, I remembered the story of De Mellos, that teacher, student goes to the teacher and keeps on saying, "You keep on telling stories. What does it mean? Why they are so relevant? Why they are so important?" Then the teacher says, "I give you a banana. You are supposed to eat it. And you do not know how to eat, and you are asking me to masticate and then give it to you." So these are the things which the analysis or the chintan has to go within. That manthan. पत्ता गिनने से मतलब नहीं है, फल खाने से मतलब है. So these words are only means for us to understand, and I am sure this will trigger somewhere deep within, be it is the system of meditation or be it the system of manthan. And that nididhyasana is something which is very important. And I am sure all the people who are participating, they have been able to take up a cue from these talks and start working on themselves. So there the life becomes more joyful or more purposeful, and we are closer to the truth. That becomes the end result, or probably we start emptying all unwanted things from ourselves and then become zero, become empty. That we have been carrying the luggage for quite many lives, and it is time for us to disluggage ourselves and move towards the reality, move towards the Satya. Thank you very much, Raghuji. We will have a prayer. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasye dukkha bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.